Testing, testing, testing.
Governor, how you doing? All right. The meeting of the September 7th, 2021 Memphis City Council meeting is reconvened. But first, I know you will all join me in celebrating the Keith Richards, the Superman of the Memphis City Council, who had a stint put in and is still here, Ed Ford. Welcome back. The story of how he got out of the hospital early to make it here to be with us. If you have a moment, get the story. All right, everybody's here. Madam Comptroller, call the roll, please.
Council members Canali.
Here.
Carlisle.
Here.
Easter Thomas.
Present.
Ford. Johnson. Jones.
Here.
Logan.
Present.
Morgan.
Here.
Robinson. Smiley. Vice Chairwoman Swearingen.
Present.
Dr. Warren.
Present.
Chairman Corbett.
And I am present. Chair observes.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Oh, thank you. Okay, colleagues, we're here. Apparently, we have two orders of business. The first one is regarding fire. Councilmember Warren, I'm going to recognize you to introduce the resolution, please.
Mr. Chair, I have two motions. The first motion is to suspend the rules, and I'd like us to bring item number 52, which is actually off of the committee that we did last committee meeting, as a resolution to appropriate contract construction, the amount of $6 million for FS 02031 Fire Station Construction Project, District 7, Super District 8.
Without
I'd like
objection.
to suspend the rules to be able to vote on that tonight.
Without objection, so ruled, we are now discussing this item. Please present.
Mr. Chair, this was evidently a payment that I think is going to be going for construction materials. And what we would like to try to do, I believe, is to lock in the price before those materials go up. And our chief would like us to do this with same night minutes tonight if we could. And I so move.
All right, it is, go ahead and move it digitally. Councilor Robinson moved it. Oh, it's in her district, seconded by Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you.
Can we go ahead and have someone from the administration give us a quick presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Council, for considering this motion tonight. This is for the construction of Fire Station 1, which will be combining the current Fire Station 1 and the Fire Station 6 that's on Thomas into the new location there, on Chelsea Avenue. We have the bids come in, and we would need to go ahead and get this under contract because, as you know, due to COVID, the prices of construction continue to escalate. So we need to get this locked in, the contract locked in as soon as possible so that we can begin construction. We have a commitment to be out of our current fire station that is owned by St. Jude now. We have to be out of there by December of 2022. So that'll put us right on our timeline for our construction project.
Thank you very much. Dr. Warren, you're in the queue. You're recognized.
So this is for the construction of the fire station that is in Councilwoman Robinson's district. Is that correct, or it's different district?
No, so I believe this is in District 7.
Then I must have.
Yeah, it's 235 Chelsea will be the new address. It's on Chelsea between 4th and 5th.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Warren. See no other members in the queue. It was moved by Robinson, seconded by Councilman Carlisle. So you're ready to vote on this new item 52. Please press the screen and cast your vote.
Canali, yes. Carlisle, yes. Easter Thomas, yes. Ford, yes. Johnson, yes. Jones, yes. Logan, yes. Morgan, yes. Robinson, yes. Smiley, yes. Swearingen, yes. Warren, yes. Chairman Corbett, yes.
That item passes. And at the end of the meeting, let's make sure we do same night minutes, please, Madam Vice Chairman, on item 52.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chief. All right, colleagues, Before we go back to item 51, it's come to my attention that we have some new direction from the federal government. Chief Ford, would you like to come up and share?
Good afternoon, Council Member Shirley Ford, Chief Financial Officer, City of Memphis. While we still have not received the final rule from Treasury, I did mention to you at our last meeting about the report that is required to submit to the Treasury related to our intention and proposal for spending of the ARPA grant funds. This report was due on August 31st, and as I reported to you, we filed for an extension on the report since this had not been agreed upon by council at this point. I would like to let you know that we did receive a response from Treasury, and if you would, please, I'd like to read this response to you. It was received yesterday afternoon at 4:16. It says, thank you for your inquiry. Treasury is not providing further extensions for the interim report or the recovery plan at this point, but the Treasury portal is still open, and we encourage you to submit your report as soon as possible.
Well, that's brief and to the point. Okay. Council members, do you have any questions of Chief Ford? Councilman Carlisle, make sure you get in the queue. Councilman Carlisle, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, based on this information, it seems prudent at this time to move to reconsider item number 51.
Without objection? Objection. All right. You want to let's ask questions of Chief, and then I'll recognize you to bring it back to the floor. Further thoughts? Seeing none, Councilman Jones, you're recognized.
Thank you. Chief Ford, is it therefore permissible, though, for the council or the city to say that we do not have a planned allocation for any portion of those funds?
It is required by the requirements that are set forth in the report that we have to identify projects.
Identify projects, but so there are no provisions to essentially say that, well, just say we don't have a plan to spend, or we have an unassigned amount.
I think it would be permissible for us if we have not decided on the full allocation to say that there is a piece of the allocation that is yet to be determined. But I think it is prudent for us to move forward with this. The projects that have been approved have been reported, but that does not encompass what they call the plan report that outlines all of the requirements for the reporting for this allocation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Council Lady Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chip. Good afternoon. You said it does not include all of the reporting. That caught me at the end. To what you mean, all the reporting? What all paperwork or response should you have to provide in this report?
So the recovery plan report is pretty extensive. It does require, it requires an executive summary. It requires a descriptive use of funds that we describe in detail how these funds are going to be allocated to public health, negative economic impact, service to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay, water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, and revenue replacement. We are also required to report our equitable outcomes related to how this jurisdiction's planned or current use of the funds prioritizes economic and racial equality as a goal, name specific targets and outcomes related to that. We are required to describe in detail our community engagement and how these funds are intended to address pieces of community engagement. It also has a use of evidence, which is interventions, which would be appropriate for the money that we have asked to be allocated for GBIP, would be an example of use of evidence or intervention based. It provides a table a very extended table, and I'm happy to send this report format to you if you would like, but it requiring all of the various categories that the use of these funded.
Okay, Chief Ford, I got it. Okay, quite extensive. My question too is, for any suggested use of the funds, we will have to answer all of those questions in order to turn in the paperwork. Okay. Now, I heard what you said, but did they actually give you a deadline? Seemed like they left it open from what I heard too.
The exact words were, the portal is open and we encourage you to submit your report as soon as possible. There are specific dates that the portal remains open for certain reports, that we have reported our spend that we have approved and spent. What they are asking for is a recovery plan that is a full and comprehensive plan about what we intend to do with the proceeds from the federal funding.
Okay, will any funds be released before this approval is given?
Well, we have already received our first tranche of funding.
Yeah, but I mean for the other uses that we have talked about. Let's say we select one of those activities.
I cannot spend money on those initiatives until council approves.
Okay, but even after council approves it, does all that information that you just listed have to be submitted before the funds are given to the different agencies in order to complete the task?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions of Chief? Going once. All right, seeing no other members in the queue, Councilman Carlisle, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of this information, I move that we reconsider the hold on item number 51 and open the floor for debate.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Been moved by Carlisle, seconded by Robinson. We are now debating, this is item 51, it's the American Rescue Plan. The floor is now open for suggestions and or comments. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest that we revisit what were the recommended allocations of council members at the last meeting and let that be the starting point for our discussions. And then we can take it from there. I don't know if, I have in front of me what would be the various suggestions from last week. I don't know if we need to look at them individually or what the will of the council would be, but that's how I would suggest that we start.
Councilman Carlisle, do you have a thought on this? Take your mask off, please. It's easier to understand you, my friend.
Fair enough. In light of the information and the time, and I'm happy to be here, it seemed to me that when I looked at all of those allocations, there were roughly $31 million or so of things that were on the wish list of the body. It seems to me that the administration has done what it is willing to do to compromise, and I'm wondering if this body couldn't reach a compromise in order to move this along and get everybody home this evening. And I would think something to the effect of around $20 million for council-led initiatives would be an appropriate bucket, and we could come back together on Tuesday in Budget Committee and talk about and vet, because I know that some are internal and some are external. I know Councilman Warren has a couple of external groups that'll allow members to have the opportunity to either bring people in that want to talk or prepare to present on those and afford them the appropriate amount of time. And if we do that, we can amend out a few line items from the administration's budget, but we could pass a comprehensive plan today. And I guess I'll ask Chief Ford, if we passed a council-led initiatives line item as a part of the American Rescue Plan, would that suffice it for the federal government, understanding that those initiatives may be divvied up into smaller programs as we go forward?
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, we could do that. If this body decided to set aside a certain section or a certain dollar amount, in your example, the $20 million, that would be council community initiatives. I could still report the entire proposal plan, and then as council developed their plan for that spend, and then the report for that $20 million.
Thank you. Colleagues, that would be my suggestion. Mr. Chairman, if you have any suggestions on where, or any other colleagues, where that money could come from, because there's 13 million already in that bucket. I know we've discussed broadband as a possibility to reduce that by 5 million. But if you have any other suggestions for that extra 2 million, we could move this along as amended, go home tonight and come back and discuss how we would like to divvy up the $20 million for the council initiative. That's my thought. I'll yield the floor.
All right, hold on real quick, just make sure I'm clear. Reduce broadband by 5 mil?
Yes, sir. So
take it down to 15 million.
yes, sir. And that would increase council initiatives to 18 million. And we could reduce the city's construction line item by $1 million. And we could reduce the city assets line item by $1 million. And that would get us to an even $20 million. And I believe that 13 members can come together and figure out, based on what's on the table, where these priorities would lie. I know that there are requests from third parties out there for certain amounts of money, and just because somebody asks for X million dollars doesn't mean that we have to give them X million dollars. We can help get them started, as Chief McGowan said last week. So if we're able to agree on that today and come back in good faith, we can all go home here in a very short amount of time. And that would be my ask of the body.
All right. We still have council members in the queue. So before we really chew into this again, so what you're proposing is basically an amendment to item 51 to reduce broadband 5 million, to reduce construction 2 million, put the remaining 20 million into council initiatives. And I guess either Tuesday we'll divide it up amongst the 13 members, or divide it amongst.
Mr. Chairman, we could agree to divide it up now. Yes, sir. Or
let me hear from the other council members, because I hear where you're going. I like it, but let's go through the queues, make sure I'm clear. Council Lady Johnson, you're up.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. First of all, I think I would like to have each one of those items that we talked about last week needs to just be briefly read off, because we have some council members who were not here last week, that at least they need to be afforded the opportunity to hear what those items were. And then the second proposal I have is anybody who made some of those recommendations open to reduction of any of those items. And let's see what the total amount is we're actually working with. I'd hate to see anybody necessarily adding anything tonight, but let's get down to a realistic number, because what I see is you're asking
we need
us
copies
to
of this for everybody.
From 30 to 20 million. So I need to make sure that's reasonable and we're dealing with a reasonable number. That's my recommendation at this point.
All right, copies of the conversation and the numbers from last meeting, I believe, are being handed out.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so it sounds like kind of dog-legging in. Let me keep going through and we'll circle back. Councilman Warren, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we were presenting these items at our last meeting, I had two items on the agenda: communities and schools, and education to prosperity. And those are both educational programs. But I was really moved by Chief McGowan's discussion about how we're not the only people getting ARPA. And out of all the other groups here, it seemed like we got the smallest amount of ARPA that was available, and that what we should probably try to do is to figure out how we can use our money to seed and then get other governmental bodies to use their ARPA money to reach the goal for each of these particular groups. And I want to do that with my ask, which was much, like $10 million. And I think the idea that we could go down to $20 million may be a reasonable thing. And I'd like to know if administration thinks that's something they could do based on the proposal that came from Councilman Carlisle, before I finish my questions.
Thank you, Councilman. Doug McGowan, Chief Operating Officer, 347 Stonewall. We have just taken a look based on the recommendation there. And it's important that we have some money in broadband. Again, We don't have a magic number for what that overall will be, but $15 million gets us a good start. When combined with Accelerate Memphis, you allocated 7.5, so that's about 22.5 million. If we get a match of that equal amount here locally, certainly that meets all of the gap demands. So I think that's a good start. And then on the two others, the construction cost accelerator and then the other community assets, those are certainly reasonable. The numbers that we brought forward to you on all of these are just like budgeting. That is our best guess for the year. But we certainly don't know what all the construction cost acceleration will be, but certainly that provides us still a $4 million buffer in that and provides us a $4 million buffer for those things that are publicly supported. Obviously, many of those assets receive public money, so that is a hedge against our general fund, and it seems reasonable and prudent. And so certainly we could stand behind those reductions to bring it up to 20 million.
I guess the other question I had that for people who weren't here last week is this was something that confused me because I didn't understand that we have a limited amount of time to replenish losses, and it's directly related to the time that we had the loss to use this ARPA money to replace monies that we've spent in our budget that we've been pulling our, I guess, rainy day fund into play. Could perhaps Chief Ford talk about that to bring Commissioner Ford Robinson up to that?
Yes, sir, Councilman, thank you very much. Again, with the revenue replacement, there are very specific times related to when that calculation can be done. And once the calculation year has passed, that time is December 31st, 2020, 21, 22, and 23. Once those dates are passed, you can't go back and replace revenue from a prior period. It is a one-time specific calculation that also must be presented in this report so that the Treasury can see exactly how we came to that calculation for revenue replacement. That's correct, sir.
Well, colleagues, I think that's where I was confused last week as I was looking at this, trying to figure out where we could get money or use money. And I think we definitely want to make sure we don't damage our ability to replenish our rainy day fund if possible. So I'm in agreement with Councilman Carlisle that this is a reasonable compromise, and I would like to see us all get together and try to figure out how we can fund as many good programs as possible, and then ask our colleagues at the County Commission and in the State Capitol to help us completely fund those programs. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Morgan, you have not been recognized yet. Would you like to go, or would you? Councilman Jones is the second time and ahead of you in the queue. Councilman Jones, you're recognized.
Chief McGowan, one of the things I requested was looking at the construction cost accelerator. I don't recall receiving an idea of how many construction projects that we had in the works and what those projected overages could potentially be. That's one of the things that we clearly know that if we have cost overruns, that's going to come from the general fund.
Sure.
So before we make that reduction and accept that recommendation as a reduction, I would like us to have for us to be more informed before we make that recommendation and have an idea of, and I would say really for this next year, because we have things that are on the projects on the ground or in construction right now that if there are cost overruns, we need to address those.
Sure. And I apologize, I don't have that. We're still working on that overall cost, but we do know the projects that we've hit so far. So we have several of the fire projects, for instance, each individual one has come in about 60,000 over the other, close to 100,000, but those are relatively major capital construction projects. So we are trying to forecast based on new information that's coming in all the time. For instance, the price of lumber is constantly coming down, so we're trying to adjust. So it is a bit of a moving target. I guess the best information I have for you until I continually get the project together, I would say by the end of the year, I'd have a wonderful estimate of what the acceleration was, but we are chasing prices every day. So again, anytime we take on projects, there's always a risk. We always have a buffer built in. During a pandemic, when prices are fluctuating, this really is our hedge against the general fund. Obviously,
Right.
My suggestion is I believe that to be a good number. When we put $5 million forward, $4 million I still believe to be a good number that gives you a hedge against your general fund. And clearly, if our projections do not bear that out, then clearly that's money that's still available to be allocated. On the other hand, just like any other project, if it comes to the end and is way over budget, we have some decisions to make about how we do. So I just don't have the compendium of those costs for every project. Chief Ford and I just spent about an hour and a half today with General Services trying to get a good forecast there. So it's going to take us just a little time to get all of those out. And again, I think we're playing a little bit of, horseshoes in this. We're trying to get as close as we can just to have that opportunity. So
Okay.
that's what I have. Unfortunately, that's the best I have for you right now is on all the projects we had, we forecast $5 million and we put a little extra just to make sure we were covered. I'm still comfortable with 4 that we're going to be in shooting distance of the target at the end of the year.
Okay. So I'm just doing some back of the napkin computations here. And I know that we technically we talk about this year, we're talking about 2 different fiscal years.
Right.
So if we had, let's just say from a capital standpoint, we had last year $60 million worth of capital construction. So that's 60 from last fiscal year, 60 from this fiscal year, 120 total. So we may not necessarily have $120 million worth of projects. If you're telling me that number is perhaps 80, well, if that number is 100, $5 million would be 5% that we're looking from an overrun standpoint. But we know that the inflationary pressures that we have are greater than 5%. So I am not comfortable just saying, without knowing what that big number is, to just say that $4 or $5 million is sufficient for what we know are extreme, and it may be an aberration, but extreme inflationary pressures. And so that, just as sacrosanct as the revenue replacement is for some of my colleagues up here, this is a category that I would say just is as sacrosanct, because from a revenue replacement, we may have some discretion with that. But if we have a project that's underway that is 6 months from construction, we don't have an option of not paying that bill. So I would be very uncomfortable approving of that $1 million reduction in this particular line item.
Sure. So I think that's a fair statement. And again, we just don't have a perfect crystal ball about where we are. We gave it our best estimate at the beginning of the pandemic when we brought this $5 million to you. And I'll still tell you that is our best estimate of the aggregate amount of construction. We have, $200 million underway with Accelerate Memphis over the next couple of years. We have, as you said, we have, $80 million of capital construction underway with other projects there. So that represents, on top of the 10% reserve and the 10% that we put into all of those projects, that's an extra measure. So, yeah, Chief Ford just said CIP spending for FY22 is $90 million. So that does provide an extra percentage or so of coverage for all of those projects over and above the what we put in for each individual project.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in terms of the order that we take this in, I would actually recommend, I think the other direction from what Councilman Jones was articulating, where why don't we go with what is known and what we've discussed, and I think what will be easiest and smoothest first, which is the larger allocation, and then we can get into the council amendments and discussions, and that's a bit more of what's unknown. We may want to bring in people to present on those items in future council meetings. And so I think that would be the priority, and that would probably suffice the federal government if we have a plan for allocating over 87% of the funds, and then the remaining funds and council initiatives yet to be allocated, and we can spend some more time working through that. But if it's opened back up and it's on the floor and we have a agreement amongst the majority of the council to set aside 20 million for council initiatives from those line items that have been mentioned already, I think let's go ahead and get that done tonight and then work our way through that remainder. That would be my preference. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Moore. And Councilman Carlisle, you want to bring all this into an amendment?
Yes, sir. Colleagues, I move to amend the resolution for American Rescue Plan Act, known as ARPA allocation, all council districts, by reducing construction cost accelerator from 5 million to 4 million, by reducing city community asset revenue recovery from 5 million to 4 million, and by reducing broadband initiatives from 20 million to 15 million and reallocating those dollars to council initiatives, which should total for council initiatives $20 million, and I so move.
All right, thank you, Councilman Carlisle. It's been moved digitally. This is an amendment. May I get a second? The amendment's been moved by Carlisle, second by Morgan. Clarification question. I had $1 million in construction line item, 5 million in broadband, and 1 million where else?
City community asset revenue recovery.
Community asset revenue recovery. All right. I have an amendment on the floor, duly moved and seconded. I see no members in the queue. I'll call this special item going forward. This is special item 3. So a yes vote is Carlisle's amendment. Prepare the screens. Cast your votes. Everybody voted? Please show the votes. Dun, 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 dun.
Canali, yes. Carlisle, yes. Easter Thomas, yes. Ford, yes. Johnson, yes. Jones, no. Logan, yes. Morgan, yes. Robinson, yes. Smiley, yes. Swearingen, yes. Warren, yes. Chairman Collette, yes.
Thank you very much. The amendment passes. Are we doing same night minutes? Is
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would request same night minutes on item number 51.
there an objection? Seeing none, this is same night minutes. Previous question been moved without objection. We're back to the amended motion, item 51. Seeing no members in the queue, I assume you're ready to vote. I can't recall who moved it back in the day. So it's Carlisle, Morgan, back on the screens. Please cast your votes for the amended 51. Okay, what we just did is we're back on 51, which was ARPA. We just amended it basically to what we have now, which is what Carlisle made the changes to. So we're back to the amended motion. Okay. Item 51 was held. We brought it back to the floor. Item 51 is what you've basically been seeing, all these spreadsheets. Correct. It's all the 161 less what we've already, the 3 items we've already allocated. Okay? And it's basically everything you saw Tuesday, except that we've changed it to where we took $1 million out of the community initiatives, $1 million out of construction, $5 million out of broadband. Then we raised the council initiatives from 13 to 20 million. All right? That will suffice to the federal government. We'll go ahead and report that tonight. Then what I see happening is, and we can have a conversation, we can have a discussion after this about the 20 million. But basically what we're doing now is allocating the remaining 161 of ARPA. Would you like to clarify your motion, perhaps assist?
Yeah. All we're doing is we voted, typically in committee, we would amend. I'm just trying to do the right thing with this mask. Typically in committee, we would just make the amendments and then move it as amended. When we're down here, we had to make an amendment, vote on it, and now we are voting on the main motion basically as amended. That's all. So we've agreed to the amendment, and now we got to vote the whole thing through. Perfect. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Leave the vote open. This is unusual, but Council Lady Johnson, you're recognized.
This is for clarity's sake.
Yes, ma'am.
On some of the items that the mayor administration was recommending, I had a comment about one of them. So how do we get that resolved before we move forward?
This is time to do it.
So we have to amend it again.
We are in the middle of a vote, okay? So, and what you're talking about, is it anything that we've been messing with, i.e. the construction funds, the broadband?
No, it's very simple. I just want to make sure it's stated.
All right.
It's very simple.
So you have a question of,
I can tell you what it is, and then you can see. I didn't
Please.
want it to be on the record.
okay, this is unusual, but to be fair, please share. Chief, be ready.
Okay. In regards to the Boys and Girls Club, I'm in agreement, but I want to make sure that those activities are taking place in Whitehaven and in Westwood as well. And I think the list that they provided did not have those locations. So can we have an agreement, a gentleman agreement, whatever it would take, to make sure we have those services provided for after-school care in Whitehaven and Westwood?
My short answer is yes.
Okay.
We want these services to be in the areas where our students need it most. And since this money is coming from the city of Memphis, we have asked the school district to provide us information about what schools they suggest, but we will come together with them to make sure that they are in the areas that this body desires.
Thank you. That's
Good to
all,
go?
Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Understands each
All
other.
right, we're good to go. Everybody cast your votes. Screens are open. Yes vote is 51 as amended. Has everybody had a chance to vote? Thumbs up. Please show the screens.
Canali, yes. Carlisle, yes. Easter Thomas, no. Ford, yes. Johnson, yes. Jones, no. Logan, yes. Morgan, yes. Robinson, yes. Smiley, yes. Swearingen, yes. Warren, yes. Chairman Colette, yes.
That item passes as amended.
So we go
Okay.
ahead.
Before we read same night minutes and go through that, may I make a suggestion, Committee Chairman Morgan? On the 20 million, and this is just free advice, having served on this great council for 6 years, okay? It's just like the grants. We work on them during budget season. We have done a great job on this council of working together, everybody listening and everybody sharing, everybody making some necessary cuts that are a little difficult. I'm gonna make a suggestion. Like the grants, I would divide it, 20 million divided by 13 council member districts. That way, if you want to go to the commission or the state to find additional funding, or if there are council members that have not, like in my case, not allocated any of whatever I get, not yet, it would be a great opportunity to work together, potentially, to meet whatever goals. I just want to share this because I am extraordinarily concerned that all the goodwill, this thing could go Hunger Games on us, all right? And like councils of old, there are going to be 7 members going to be real happy and 6 that aren't going to be happy. I've seen it happen too many times. So take a look at your requests, maybe see if there's some places you could steam, compromise, find some angles, or let's just keep it real simple, 20 divided by 13. That's just an opinion. Before we go to same night minutes, obviously Mr. Jones wishes to share.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, that would be a total disaster. We couldn't do this with 2.6 million, and it'll be a disaster 10 times that. So we've had an opportunity, each council member's had an opportunity to place on the floor, open for discussion, the different projects that are important to them. We have some in front of them, and we have some in front of us right now. So in my opinion, this should be the starting point. If we wanted an additional 10 million or $30 million, that was the basis of my no votes on this. We just took that first recommendation without any allocation for that. But for us to have it will be a complete disaster for us to go through the same process doing budget and to look at the number of hearings that we had doing budget for basically 1/10 of the amount, well, 10 times the amount that we had, nearly 10 times the amount then. Colleagues, I think that that's an exercise in futility. We have things before us, as easily as we supported what the administration had, we've had an opportunity amongst ourselves to bring other things to the table. And I think we have other productive things that we can be doing versus doing it that way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see the list that's here. I was not here and available for the last meeting, so I do have and have had a list of items I'd like to be added to this list. I do think that we could review the items that we have here, that we put some parameters around those items, how people are going to accomplish it, what will the goals be for each of these items so that we know whether we have a good product in the end. I don't think we need to add anything else other than the people who have not had an opportunity to put anything here on this list and just go from here for that 20 million.
Hey, it was just an idea. Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Warren, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've all presented, I think, really good ideas, and I think that we can, being allocated an equal amount, which seems fair to me, go ahead and talk to people on the council and to explain to them why we think that's important. And we should each probably come to the meeting on Tuesday with an idea of how we want to spend our money and bring it up. And at that point, then we can vote. But right now, I think to individually go through each one of these without having the chance to look at the total and then figure how we make this total be the most effective is not really going to be a good way to go. So I'm behind the idea of dividing it up as you mentioned it, and then let us look at how we could allocate it among all these good projects, because some of them we may not want to allocate for. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Carlisle. Oh, Councilor Johnson, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm personally not in support of dividing it by 13. Listen to all of the requirements that Mrs. Ford went through and explain what has to take place in order for this money to be spent correctly. If we start dividing up into 13, we're going to end up with organizations who are not capable of meeting all of those particular requirements. So I said, let's keep it on a level where the individuals who are agencies that actually receive these funding are able to meet those guidelines. And I think working collectively, we can go through each one of those items. If the individuals who recommended them will come back with a plan exactly how these items will take effect and meet some of the guidelines Mrs. Ford said, I think we can move forward with it. But I don't see us trying to divide up 20 million to buy 13. Oh, no, we had a hard time trying to get rid of $200,000. Individually. Let's be realistic and actually, I just hear things in general. Some of the titles are pretty broad, that if other people want to add to it, whoever recommended, I'm sure those individuals will work with you and try to expand and make sure the items that you're looking for are included in it, in the 20 million. But I just can't see how we're going to come back next week anticipating how much you can divide 20 million. What's that, Jones? I know you know what it is already. But so how am I come back and try to figure out how I'm going to use my money? I'm looking at the items on the table, and either I give it all to one particular item or somebody else. I don't see how we're going to do it, a 13 divided by 13. That won't work. So I think we just need to talk about each item collectively and see, can we make this happen?
I think that's a great point. Then I want to add $1 million. Let's go ahead and add $1 million to the Boys and Girls Clubs for Kirby High School, please. Let's go ahead and just make sure we add that. Councilman Carlisle, you're recognized.
All very good comments and good feedback. These are things I think we can get done and discuss on Tuesday in Chairman Morgan's Budget Committee. And with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I move items 51 and 52 for a vote for same night minutes.
Okay. Good conversation so far, guys. We'll pick it up Tuesday. Question on the. To that motion, Mr. Chair. I know, Carl, moved by Carl, seconded by Warren. You have a question? I do. Discussion?
I was just trying to figure out how do you kick out of school if they add $1 million for a particular school?
The idea is that it's roughly $1 million, for each school on the Boys and Girls Clubs. And what,
It's not.
they were doing 10 million for 10 schools.
It's $9 million.
No. Well, they haven't selected any in District 2.
They haven't selected any. But I was in on the meeting. District, that's not how that ball works.
Okay, then, all right, I tell you what, guys, we'll discuss this Tuesday. Everybody, bring your good ideas for how to spend the money. Be prepared to explain them. Be ready to walk us through exactly how you want to spend this money, who's responsible for it, and what are the metrics for making sure that the money is allocated properly. Further thoughts?
I've got a motion on the
Any other
floor,
questions on the motion? Ed, you're up. Hit the green button, please, Warren.
Let me explain something to you all, okay? And then Tuesday, we can think about it. I know everybody got their little pet peeves, okay? We have $20 million. It's not gonna work. Councilman Jones, correct. You can't divide it up by 13. It's not gonna happen. First of all, if you're gonna be dividing anything up that $20 million, and please forgive me, super district people, you would not even be involved in the $20 million. It would go to the 7 districts, okay? That's how it would be divided, okay? Because it would not work if you including the 6 super districts, because then it's not gonna balance out right. It would have to only go 7 districts divided by that $20 million. Even though our super districts represent those 7 districts. But there are 13 council members. We all have our pet peeves. We got the Tuesday to come and say, hey, what's the best? What do you want to do here? What do you want to do? And I think Tuesday, we all can do the right thing and spend that 20 million correctly. We got a little time, but hey, 10 million sound good, but you may have to cut yours back to 5 million or to 2 million. All of us need to do it collectively. And hey, and let's get it done and let's go a little bit further. But again, like I said, 20 million must be divided by 7 districts. Our super districts have to help all the rest of us along the way, just to be honest with you all, okay? And I think we got enough time to get this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We have a motion on the floor. It's been moved, properly seconded, and approved. All right, Councilman Jones, but is it regarding same night minutes? Go ahead.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, move that we reconsider item number 51, dealing with the allocations for, the ARPA funds.
And I have a motion on the floor that's moved, properly seconded, and nobody else in the queue to vote on same night minutes. Is there any discussion on same night minutes? All right, I need a screen. Well, it's been moved and seconded, so you can object. All right, let's vote on same night minutes. Cast your votes. You're voting to approve same night minutes.
This is your vote.
Well,
for
it would
the
not
same
change,
item.
it would not change the outcome.
Canali, yes. Carlisle, yes. Easter Thomas, no. Ford, yes. Johnson, no. Jones, no. Morgan, yes. Robinson, yes. Smiley, no. Swearingen, no. Warren, yes. Chairman Cosette, yes.
Council Lady, do you wish to register your vote? You're a yes or a no to that? No. Show Council Lady as a no.
So noted, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. That item passes. Same night minutes are approved. You move to recess.